Hello and welcome everybody to Booze Hour Community Edition today. Today I've got on Adam Scalena. So this should be an interesting conversation in that we're going to talk about everybody in Vancouver's favorite subject besides the weather, or maybe even more so than the weather, is the real estate in Vancouver. It's a topic that's been pretty hot, I don't know, probably for the last 10 years or so. And just in that, there's a lot of speculation on what the market's going to do. This conversation, given the times that we're in, I wanted to focus on how things have changed over time and hopefully give some insight into what the real estate as an industry has done to deal with current times, but also it is a real estate discussion. So I think we'll get into some of what's just happening in Vancouver real estate anyways. So Adam Scalena is the co-host of the Vancouver Real Estate Podcast. So I think we'll have a really great conversation with him on that. But before that, things that I want to get into, stickers. So as always, I have these stickers available. There's a link. I don't know if I linked it down below. So if you head over to darylandboo.com, you can actually sign up for a newsletter on there. And through that sign up link, you should be able to sign up for stickers. If not, I'm going to throw a link down below here afterwards that you can get the stickers from, or visit any of the previous live streams. There will be a link for the stickers on there. I would like to remind everybody that you should be subscribing to the YouTube channel if you're watching from that. So if you're watching from YouTube, you'll either see a link down here, or it might be kind of closer to here depending on how you have the screen set up, but there's a subscribe button on there. You can click on that. That way you'll be notified. Actually, if you click the bell as well, then you'll be notified anytime that I go live, which is around once or twice a week, maybe sometimes 3 times a week, with all the fun content that we have on here. If you're following on LinkedIn right now and somehow found us on LinkedIn, then you can continue to watch on there. That's fine. But LinkedIn isn't the best at notifying people when I go live. So YouTube is still probably the preferred way if you want to stick to or want to be notified right away on this stuff. Also on LinkedIn, on YouTube, you'll be able to see all the archived content way easier as well. So if you're just kind of going back through the archives of the content that we've put out. Also, this is available via podcast. So you may be listening to this right now anyways, but if you aren't and you want to listen as opposed to watch this stuff, there is podcast format available, Apple, Google, and Spotify. Also, there's a newsletter. So I have alluded to the newsletter. That's how you can get these stickers. If you head over to the newsletter sign up, throw in some info on there, and I will send out a weekly technical newsletter on all things F5 and some things as far as Vancouver industry, as far as IT. Also, I will mention that I have a new decoration up here as well. So pretty fancy. Let me know what you guys think of this. You can leave a comment down below. Should I get more of these awesome lights? This was $20 off of Amazon. And so far, that's my biggest investment into the background of Booze Hour so far. Otherwise, the other previous investments were toilet paper. So I think that's a little bit old at this point. I might actually remove the toilet paper. I don't know. I'll look for comments on that as well if I should fix up the decorations there. And then the original beer that I drank on the very first Booze Hour is back there as well. But this new light, I'm pretty excited about this addition on here. All right. I think that is it for announcements that I have for you guys. So without further ado, I will bring on Adam Scalena. Hey, Adam, how's it going?
Hey, good, Boo. How are you doing?
I am doing well, thanks. Really excited to have you on. So for folks who don't know, I'm a huge fan of Adam's podcast, the Vancouver Real Estate Podcast. And I was really sad that I could not bring out my Vancouver Real Estate Podcast mug, which I adore. And I was hugely excited to actually receive one from you guys. And I posted on Instagram multiple times about this mug that I got. And
we'll get you some more mugs. We'll get you some more mugs for sure. I can't help but point out the contrast between where I'm broadcasting and where you're broadcasting. I look like I'm in a really kind of boring office, and you look like you're in almost like a sexy jazz lounge or something, but it's nice. Good lighting.
That's as I was saying this earlier too. In my office, I only actually have to worry about keeping about 6 square feet clean, and then everything is pushed beyond here as far as like boxes and various other junk. But the nice thing about broadcasting in this way, I just have to keep this one section clean. So thank you for that. Yeah, cool. So this conversation, for folks who are following along in what I've been trying to do for the past couple of weeks is trying to have conversations with people in industries that we can learn from as far as how they've reacted to COVID over the past few months here. People are changing the way that they do business. This affects my customers in a way because some of my customers are retail or they just do business in ways that are really face-to-face. And so they use technology to further themselves and continue to do business. So I think we'll get to that. But you, as the host of the Vancouver Real Estate Podcast, I think we should, first of all, just kind of go through what your history is with that, and then allow people to get to know you a little bit. So why don't you tell us about kind of where you started, maybe how you got into real estate in the first place, and then how you got into this podcasting thing?
Yeah, so my story of getting into real estate was now probably about 13 years ago or so. At the time, I was living in Vancouver. My girlfriend at the time then was from Victoria, and we used to go visit her parents occasionally. And her dad had been a real estate investor. So this guy had bought multiple large essentially mansions in Oak Bay, like 10,000 square foot homes, and had converted them into multifamily. So several units, I think he had at the time around, call it 50, 60 doors or so. And he had retired at 38 through his real estate investing. So my experience of kind of meeting this guy was he was almost always in like a smoking jacket, like, kind of a house coat. He'd wake up, he'd go to the gym, he'd do his long walk, and then at about 5 o'clock or so, he'd have like a scotch or start relaxing for the evening. He had a pretty great lifestyle, and we used to kind of joke because he'd actually live, like his allowance that he'd mostly live off would be from the washer and dryer units in his rentals. So he had kind of really kind of cracked the code of life, I thought, spending time with him. So I did kind of have the luxury at that time of sitting down with him occasionally and picking his brain about, real estate and why he loved real estate. And it got me kind of curious. And then I went and I read the books that most people will read when they get excited about real estate investing. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and books like that. And it just started a passion. So I remember after one visit specifically, I went back and I looked at enrolling to get licensed, and I got licensed towards the end of 2010. So I've been in the business for a decade or so, and the rest is history. So it's been great, and I'm so happy I ended up in real estate just because it allows you to do a lot of things with your time and explore different avenues in business, and so it's been great.
Oh, that's really cool. A lot of people don't necessarily grow up thinking that they're going to be a real estate agent, and then similar story. You figure out that, hey, this could be an avenue where it lends well to all my attributes that I've found so far in life. Perhaps
it's funny. I was talking to a good friend of mine who's a mortgage broker, and we were talking the other day, and that came up like, I guess this is what I'm going to do because I've been doing it for 10 years. So a lot of people, I think, especially nowadays, a lot of people will have several careers throughout their life, right? But I think just as long as you're passionate about what you're doing, I think that's the key, right? So
yeah, that's really cool. And so the Vancouver Real Estate Podcast, now that's been around for how long at this point? I looked it up before. You guys are over 200 episodes in.
Yeah, so coming up on 5 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's been a while.
Wow, that's really neat. And so what was the genesis of this? That you guys were just trying to do something different with marketing?
Well, it's interesting because we actually, Matt and I, my brother who co-hosts the podcast with me, were kind of listening to I would say we were kind of early on in the podcast days of listening to podcasts. Like, I remember at the time when I'd bring up podcasts, I almost had to explain to people what they were. Whereas now I feel like everybody listens to podcasts, but we used to listen to a ton of podcasts in our spare time. And we would also, after, long work weeks, we would often sit around and have a beer at the end of the day and talk about the market and talk about kind of the what we were seeing in real estate, what we were excited about. So that's kind of was the origins of it. Is we actually sat down one evening and we were having a beer and we said, we should just see if there's any podcasts about real estate in Vancouver. And at the time there weren't. So, cut to a few weeks later, we set up some equipment. We recorded our first episode, which was just talking about why people invest in the city of Vancouver. And we put it on iTunes and we basically forgot about it. We weren't sure what schedule we were going to be doing, and woke up the next day and noticed we were getting a ton of traction. And that week we ended up in the top 10 on Business iTunes Canada. It was just bizarre. I guess there was just a huge appetite for people to listen to just, people talk about the market in Vancouver. And then we started just running with it. We felt then like we were first to market. So then we just started sprinting and trying to get more episodes out. We developed a format where we were, having guests, much like something like you're doing, where we're having guests on the show, industry experts, urban planners, politicians, developers, mom and pop investors. So, and we just started running with it, and it's been a great decision, and it has been, perhaps not surprisingly, it's kind of been at the core of a lot of our marketing. We've kind of built a business. We've built an extension of our previous business around the podcast over the past 5 years. So it's been great.
That's awesome to see. I'm also a huge fan of podcasts. Was listening to Joe Rogan in like episode single digits, and then was just thirsty for podcasts. And for those who don't know, I'm like, as opposed to investing in stock market or indexes like a lot of people do for their retirement, I invest in real estate for my retirement plan instead. And so I was always looking for real estate podcasts, and every so often I would check, and there would be nothing localized to Vancouver. And I think Vancouver is a very different market from many other markets. People would compare us to Bay Area, but I think there's differences in terms of income compared to Bay Area. So I think there's unique challenges or unique opportunities or challenges to Vancouver. So it was almost like, why wasn't this done before? And you guys came along and did it and have reaped the rewards of it. So that's pretty cool. I want to park that for a second and revisit all of that, but I don't want to keep people hanging as far as Vancouver real estate goes. And you guys have, we got Chris Peerless here, actually a buddy of mine, big fan of Adam's podcast. That's cool.
Thank you, Chris.
Very cool. So, for you coming on, you've had all these conversations with folks who have bird's eye view on real estate, and I don't want to keep people hanging. I want to get from the horse's mouth what's actually going on with Vancouver real estate, because a lot of people, when you have real estate conversations with folks, it's very rarely based on data, but you guys, for listeners, you guys actually push out, if people go and sign up, you guys actually push out stats. So you guys are familiar with what's exactly going on down to numbers, right?
Yeah. I mean, we are operating in the market on a daily basis. So you always get a better read on the market when you're on the ground, I find. And often what we're kind of noticing about the market, the media picks up 3 to 6 months after, right? Mm-hmm. So it is interesting. I mean, we've got a very busy real estate team in Vancouver. So we're transacting, like we're selling a lot of real estate on a daily basis. So we're kind of seeing if we're seeing when the market starts to shift. And it's been a very interesting year. I mean, for everybody, right? At the beginning of the year, we were smoking busy in Vancouver. The market was really picking up between really the end of 2019 and early 2020. And then, of course, COVID hit in March. It was like I think the third or fourth week of March, where we just really started to notice that everything was shutting down. And for about 2 months there wasn't a ton of activity. People moved to the sidelines. People didn't want to visit. Obviously, open houses shut down. People didn't want to go and view properties. Sellers didn't want people in their homes. And it was really a big question mark about how the market was going to respond. Since then, I think it was really around I guess May or June, when we started to get kind of positive reporting on COVID numbers in BC, where the market started to come back. And it's been really interesting. I mean, we've had low interest rates. I mean, most of my clients that are getting an interest rate or getting a mortgage right now, they're in the ones. So they're below 2%. So I think that's part of it. A lot of people trying to capitalize on really low interest rates. But really, I think also, people have been spending a ton of time at home. And I think one of the big driving factors, at least from people that we're dealing with right now, is that they want more space. And we're seeing that reflected in the stats. Like a lot of people that we're talking about, when you have to stay home with your significant other and potentially your kids, you really realize that, maybe your 1-bedroom apartment or your 2-bedroom apartment is not ideal. So we've seen a lot of activity in the market. The market's been really, really busy. We're seeing a seller's market in most areas, and we're seeing a ton of activity in detached. Specifically. And that makes a lot of sense when you actually think about it, because on the one hand, people are kind of, because of COVID, people are moving away from vertical living condos. I think living in a 1-bedroom condo, riding the elevator every day is not ideal during a pandemic. So we've seen a lot of people reaching out, trying to get in touch to say, we want more space. We want to move to a townhouse or a detached. We want a yard. We want extra space. And then the other thing is that people no longer have to commute. So I think now, going to like an area like Squamish, is much more appealing, because you can go mountain biking during the day or rock climbing or whatever. You can work from home. You can, good schools, nice family community. You don't have to live in Vancouver, right? So we're seeing the numbers really, really reflect that. And I was checking the stats before I came on this call, anticipating a question like this. And I had no idea until I looked at the numbers here, but this is crazy. Sunshine Coast in the last 6 months is up 15%.
Wow.
Bowen Island in the last 3 months is up 11%. So we're seeing people now saying, you know what, I don't have to live in dense urban centers, and maybe I'll move to the Sunshine Coast and we can work remotely. So it's just an interesting time in the market. But yeah, it's a very, very busy market right now, for sure.
Wow. So you mentioned it's a seller's market right now. So lots of opportunity for people who want to kind of, quote unquote, cash in on their places that they have in Vancouver and kind of move out.
I think it really depends. Funny enough, actually, typically in 2019, towards the end of 2019, we were selling a lot of 1-bedroom condos downtown. And, if you priced them correctly, you were getting multiple offers. There was a ton of demand for the entry-level product in downtown Vancouver. That's now one of the softest markets that we're looking at, is the entry-level in downtown Vancouver. It was a balanced market this past month. So, it really depends. If you have a house in North Vancouver right now, it's 1 out of every 2 homes are selling. So it's an aggressive seller's market. I think if you're in the Fraser Valley in a detached house, or Coquitlam, or even, Burnaby or East Vancouver, these are areas that are the detached market is really on fire. So I think it just really comes down to the type of product you have right now. But it is definitely a good market for sellers. And if you have a yard or big outdoor space, that really helps, for sure.
Cool. So what would you say for those with the apartments? What are maybe some selling strategies that they would have to kind of be able to make that jump out?
I think the biggest thing is always to be realistic with changes in the market. I think one of the challenges we have with talking to sellers, and we even like at the end of the day, I've bought and sold properties, so I understand the challenge when you're selling something, especially if last year your property was worth a number and today it's maybe not necessarily worth that number, and you want to hang on to the number you liked more, which was the higher number from last year, right? Always, right? So I mean, the challenge now is you want to adjust your expectations. You also want to really dive into the stats and understand where the pockets of activity are. Like there's, for example, if it's a seller's market up to 600,000, and you're kind of on that brink of either listing over or under, you might want to take a more competitive approach and anchor your price just within the seller's, the more aggressive activity, where the more aggressive activity is in the seller's market. So just being really kind of keen and attentive as to like where the activity is, and I think that's one thing. And then of course adjusting expectation. Another thing that we've been doing right now, because everybody's working from home, obviously a lot of people, they have their bedrooms set up as offices, is we've been virtually staging, and we've been kind of pivoting and creating more marketing materials right now, just so people can do more research online at home, especially if they're not comfortable scheduling appointments kind of immediately. So we've kind of upped our game on our marketing materials. I think we always had great marketing materials, but now we're doing, Matterports and a lot of video. We're doing, throughout COVID, we were doing virtual open houses, Matt and I. So, so we've just kind of changed our marketing strategy slightly.
Yeah, that's a good pivot point for this. So maybe, I'm going to ask you what your prediction is on the market, but we're going to save that to the end. So we'll give people a reason to stay tuned for the entirety of this show here. But maybe we can pivot on that. So COVID hits. People don't want to be face to face. People don't want to be shaking hands right now. What did that initially look like from a realtor's perspective, where a lot of your business is face-to-face, meeting with people, hearing them out, and then taking them to showings?
Right. At the end of the day, it's interesting because people are still like, now we're doing showings, and we have been doing showings for the last few months. We're doing it differently. So for example, now we're doing open houses by appointments. So you have one group in at a time. Everybody is wearing masks, and obviously we have hand sanitizer, we're social distancing. So there's been a lot of new measures that have been put in place to make sure that everybody's safe. And then what we've noticed, like what we're doing now with our buyers, is I think the filtering process. So in other words, kind of qualifying the properties has changed a bit. Like whereas before, if somebody reached out and they wanted to see a place, we would schedule the appointment, we would go see the place, we'd see multiple properties, in an afternoon, and that would be a typical buyer's tour. Whereas now, we're sending people the floor plan, we're sending people the Matterports, we're sending them all the materials and making sure that they're very familiar with the space. And at that point, then if everything checks out, and they're still interested, then we'll actually schedule the appointment. So I think really just a lot more due diligence before properties are viewed. But properties, at the end of the day, most people still want to get in and view the property before they put pen to paper and write an offer. So,
yeah, and I think that's neat too. Like you mentioned some of these, things like the Matterport for like the 3D viewing of a space. The things like when you're actually signing documents, all that's gone very electronic over the past number of years as well. So it's like tools that were already in place are really just getting exercised really well right now. And you guys are bringing those to customers and showing them that, hey, you can do all this stuff without having to leave, or do most of this stuff without having to leave your phone.
Right.
Or computer.
Yeah, and it's funny because people buy pre-sale condos or pre-construction condos, and have for years off plans, right? So, I mean, people are definitely comfortable with that process. It hasn't really hit, I mean, I shouldn't say it hasn't hit, because we've sold a lot of properties through FaceTime videos and floor plans, and, you know, over the years for sure, especially when the market in 2017, you know, thinking of a lot of people that were relocating to Vancouver, a lot of people were buying properties without actually physically viewing them. But I think you know, there's an appetite for you know, better online resources, I think, for some buyers, and certainly there are buyers that obviously feel comfortable buying off plan. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And I think, you know, like a lot of things, COVID has kind of advanced that process. I can see, like I know a lot of developers now are getting rid of their display homes. They're moving it all online. They're building something out. They're doing a Matterport, and then that's the online resource. So I mean, I just had a client last week buy a property in Kelowna, an investment property, but it was all done online. She didn't, even though there was a display suite, we didn't view it because she felt comfortable with the fact that there was a Matterport. And there are companies like Offplan that are working on click purchases right now. So you can have a directory site that has all the resources available, and you can go on during your lunch hour if you're not watching Booze Hour, and buy a pre-sale condo with a click of a button. So,
oh wow,
I definitely think yeah. So I think, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, moving almost to like a add to cart type system for real estate. So we'll see how long, or if that's coming for the resale market, but it's definitely, you know, if you're thinking about, you know, the past few months, it's definitely moved more in that direction, I think. So
that, you know, that was going to be one of my questions is, with e-commerce right now, people are really used to the Amazon experience. Like you see an item and you can make a decision very, very quickly, and you can have that item show up at your door same day, next day, or 2 days away. And everything's already in there. So you already have a credit card number in there, your address is in there. So are you kind of seeing that with real estate now? Like people are just more diligent about getting pre-approvals for the mortgage done, and then otherwise all the tools are in place. So maybe as a realtor, you're just pushing them through the process, or guiding them through the process faster because of the tools that you have?
Yeah, I don't know if it's faster necessarily, but I you know, I mean, at the end of the day, I still think it's the biggest transaction that most people will make in their life. So it's one that's seldom just, you know, it's never done without a lot of thought, in my opinion, or in my experience, I should say. But what's interesting now is that, and we saw this coming, obviously, you know, when I started in real estate a decade ago, there were a lot of people that were still taking on kind of the old school marketing tactics of, you know, bus benches and, you know, paper marketing, or you know, postcards and that, mail drops and that sort of thing, which I still think works. You know, a lot of people still, you know, agents in, you know, Burnaby and Greater Vancouver, I know a lot of them that still get a ton of traction from their mail drops or their bus benches or whatever. But we saw the online thing obviously being having a huge impact on the market, and we started kind of early on in my career. My business partner and I started focusing on how we could get traction in the online space, you know, through video and through indexing projects and new construction, and doing a lot of kind of online lead generation kind of early on. So that's always kind of been a big strategy of ours, kind of moving online. So, and then I think it's come to fruition, like as you were suggesting, a lot of people are starting their search online, and that percentage of people just increases every single year. So a lot of the people that are reaching out to me, they listen to our podcast, they're familiar with our website, they've watched videos online, they know enough about us that they feel by the time they've reached out, they generally know who we are, and they're generally comfortable with our approach. And if they don't reach out, it's because they've probably seen something online where it's maybe not a good fit, or they've been lured by the marketing of another agent, I guess. So, but anyways, you're absolutely right. I would say just the like the courting process has gone online in a lot of ways.
So. Yeah, that's cool. So I think, and you guys are just this great example, and I tell people this as well, but when it comes to online presence, like trying to provide value without putting up a barrier in front of that is really important right now, because there are people who will put up barriers before the potential client might get any sort of value out of them. But you guys put out a podcast with tons of useful information on there. You guys have your stats reports that you guys put out there, all of this stuff for free that you guys give to clients before you've even talked to them one-on-one before.
Yeah, I think we're kind of, I guess, I don't consider myself a millennial, but I think I'm right kind of on the edge. But I also feel like, people from our generation and all the younger generations are starting online, and what they want good information, right? And they want to learn, and I feel like that's kind of I think if we look at like our marketing strategies, it's all just information based, right? And I think the future of online marketing is free content, and then you know what I mean, if you're honest and you're putting out good content, I think people will get in touch for a variety of reasons. And, we've kind of seen that demonstrated time and time again. So.
That's cool. So some of these selling motions that you have now, like doing a Matterport and producing more online material, that's invested resources on your side as the broker. Do you see this continuing on forever? Do you think people are, every single time there's some real estate to be sold, you're going to have to go through this, or do you think it's kind of temporary with COVID?
Well, I think, there's a couple things. So the marketing materials, I think I think people are going, I think this will, like, what the impact it'll have is that marketing materials are just going to get better and more extensive. And I think that will stick around. I think sellers will now demand it, because I think generally people are now used to having a Matterport, or they're used to having, a 3D floor plan or a video walkthrough. And a lot of these things were in our market beforehand, but it just, for every 10 agents, maybe only, 2 to 5 were doing them. Right now, I feel like it's going to be just a requirement, I guess, for most agents who want to be competitive with their marketing materials, which I think is a generally a good thing for the market. So I think they're going to last for the foreseeable future. And the one thing I do think that might be temporary is maybe the buying habits that we talked about earlier on. Because I think what's happening right now is we're seeing kind of people push out further and move to, say, the Sunshine Coast or to Squamish because they can now. But I still, like, Matt and I just did a talk a couple months back for an investment summit, and our big thing was, what's happening right now is this is creating opportunities in cities for purchasers, right? Because cities are soft, and this is the first time that, like, downtown Vancouver has been a fairly soft market in a very long time. So it creates opportunity for investors or for people that haven't been able to get into the market. And even though, vertical living or living in a tower right now is not appealing, I don't think that concept is going away. And I also don't think that people are giving up on the idea of the city. If anything, I think cities are just going to continue once we get through this, growing at a faster pace than they've ever grown, which is what we were seeing up until COVID hit, right? So so that's kind of the thing that I think is short-lived, is this notion of everybody moving to Oliver, BC or whatever, right? I think we'll see more of that in the short term, but in the long term, bet on cities.
Yeah, that's interesting. How far have you seen people move at this point out of the city?
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah. I mean, one thing that's interesting is I think a lot of people were getting to that age where they were maybe questioning whether they should retire. It's kind of forced people's hands a bit, and they've said, you know what, and this might be the time to retire, or this might be the time to move. And I feel like I guess at the end of the day, what COVID has done is it's kind of forced everybody to reevaluate their situation in life, right? I think everybody's been home more. I think they've been communicating as a family more, and they've probably been evaluating, like, will I have my job tomorrow? What does work look like for me for the next, 5 to 10 years, or even 1 to 3 years? And based on that, they've had to kind of turn inwards and I think actually do some soul searching and make some big decisions in life. And as a result of that, we're kind of, I think that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing people just make big life decisions as a result of this, right? So I don't know if you're feeling that too, but I feel like everyone I'm talking to is questioning what the next 3 to 5 years looks like for them, right?
Yeah, it does. It changes a lot of things. I mean, I think I've mentioned this on other shows before, but my kids are homeschooling now, so they're not only out of their school system, they're not even doing virtual school; they're doing homeschool, and so this is a big undertaking, primarily like 99.999% by my wife. To homeschool them. It's a ton of work. And, as a result, we're taking, this is what I've talked about in previous show. We're taking our walk-in closet, which is a good sized walk-in closet, and moving all the clothes to wardrobes in our master bedroom and turning that into an office space for my wife. The kids need room to be able to do their schoolwork. So they have a big dining room table, and pretty much that dining room table is now their school desk for all three of them. So it's that's definitely making changes for us. Luckily, we did have the room to do that, but I could see for other folks, they might be looking at this time right now and saying, hey, this is going to be a time where I'm going to change things around. They might like homeschooling as a long-term option because I see the benefits of it as well.
Right.
And then, they might need that extra space.
No, absolutely. And I mean, we're now like, that's obviously a big demand with buyers now that we're working with. They need a den, or they need a second bedroom, or they need a space for two people to work. Because it's just, I mean, a lot of people don't even have the option of going in, right? So I think it's changing buying habits, absolutely, and it's also changing everybody's getting more familiar with their home and have to tweak it to accommodate. So.
Yeah.
Sure.
Actually, you bring up a good point. I don't know if you've had any guests on, because I don't think you guys necessarily deal with office space, but anybody who's been on the commercial side of real estate and had any comments on what this has done for commercial real estate and for office real estate in Vancouver?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I'm actually one of the things that we've realized is we have a commercial space in the Cambie corridor in Vancouver. That's about 1,600 square feet, where we were housing 10 agents. And what we've decided is, there's basically two of us now in 1,500 square feet. So it's a bit overkill. So we've actually got our commercial space listed right now. And it's not easy to, to sublease or to lease office space right now for landlords. I think it's very tricky. It's not that it's, impossible, but there's definitely some challenges because, if anything, I think people are kind of, a lot of businesses are cost cutting right now, or they're exploring and, doing research, about having their staff work from home. Right. So, I'm hearing kind of different reviews. It really also in Vancouver right now, like commercial space, like retail space and office space, it often depends on the location right now too, because downtown Vancouver is having some challenges in certain areas like Gastown right now, and where a lot of businesses are being vandalized, and I feel like crime is up quite a bit, and there's just been some challenges in the commercial sector altogether, I would say, but.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. I always wonder about, and I don't know if I was picking on them, but WeWork, they went through sagas with their CEO and the investments and stuff, and then COVID hit, and I'm like, this is no good for a company like WeWork. I think they were just injected with another $1 billion from SoftBank, who just doesn't want to give up on them. But that whole idea of shared office space is different.
I feel like, it's like the worst thing that could possibly happen for a company like WeWork, right? Like it's on every different level. And I feel like there's been they've been really picked on. I feel like there's a lot of people that kind of are gleefully tweeting about, the challenges that they've had. But I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I think everybody was sitting around in February, thinking, well, this isn't going to happen to us. And then now here we are. And, Zoom is now everybody just does everything based out of their home. So it's a bizarre time to be alive. That's for sure.
We do have a comment here. This is Matt Tifo. Now, this is a little off topic, but he'd love to hear more about how homeschool for 3 kids is going. So I will answer this. So, everybody, I'll leave this question up. So everybody had their kids sent home who had school age kids had their kids sent home at the end of the year last year. And it was, they quickly pivoted to virtual learning, and, the kids would attend Zoom calls. And really your job at that point is just making sure that the kids attend their Zoom calls. Now they're, the districts, as the school year started, they wanted the kids to go to school. Most of the districts, I think at this point, have pivoted a little bit and allowed for some remote learning options where the teachers will check in. But I think maybe my wife as well both underestimated how much teachers put into lesson planning. When you are left alone to create a lesson plan, and my wife does all of this. I'm not taking any credit for any of it, but when you're left alone to create a lesson plan and find the resources for your kids to learn, and there's the beauty of homeschooling is that there's no formal structure to it, but it's a double-edged sword in that there's no structure to it, and there's tons of resources available to help you out. And all of a sudden you have 100 different options for ways that you can teach math to your kids and different resources. It's daunting, and you have a huge responsibility on your hands. So that would be my comment for anybody who's exploring homeschooling. I think it's a great option to explore. You have unlimited customizability, and that is something that my customers from an F5 perspective struggle with, is that when you get an F5 product, you have almost unlimited customizability with that. So you have to really figure out what you want to do at the beginning to make that investment. And fortunately, my wife has just put in all the time on this and researched everything as much as she can, but it's still a large task to deal with. So that's my comment on homeschooling. The other comment would be, it is nice to have the kids, still at home. We can do stuff as we need to. They can be done at 1:00 because they don't have to have recess at set times or anything like that. And if I happen to be able to take an afternoon off, then I can spend that with the kids. So it's good, and lots of advantages to it. And then there's a lot of work that goes into it as well. There's my comment there.
I don't envy your position.
It's really terrible. My wife. It's
yeah. Well, hopefully, if anything comes of this, teachers and healthcare workers will get a bit of a bump in their salary.
They do a lot, and you really realize that once you walk not even a mile, just a few inches in their shoes, you really realize what they go through. So we got about 10 minutes left. Two questions for you that we can go from here with. First question: is Vancouver in a bubble? I think that's what everybody thinks about Vancouver. Maybe people that are out looking from the outside in think that Vancouver's in a bubble, but is Vancouver really in a bubble?
This is it's an interesting comment. There's a lot of people in our marketplace that feel that way. And I think a lot of people are really hoping for a housing collapse. At the end of the day, I think, in my 10 years of selling real estate, I've had a lot of people hanging out on the sidelines, waiting for the bubble to quote unquote burst. And those people have waited themselves out of the market. And now, I watched as their options in downtown turned to options in, further east, and then soon it was, okay, now your options are the valley. And now the options are not even there, So I think if you're waiting for real estate prices to fall dramatically in Vancouver, you might be waiting a long time. There are people out there that think of it more as a balloon, I guess, than a bubble, where obviously it's just more durable, and the air will come out of the balloon slightly, and then the balloon will expand further. And I think I'm more of maybe that kind of party. I think we have some real challenges with Vancouver. I think one of the challenges, obviously, is we're restricted land-wise. The familiar saying is we've got the mountains to the north, the border to the south, and the ocean to the west, and the agricultural land reserve to the east, right? So we have very limited space that we can work with. But I think more so than that is, we have a ton of people coming to Vancouver and the greater Vancouver region every year. And I think after, I don't think that's going to change. I think that especially if you're immigrating to Canada, and there's a lot of people immigrating to Canada because of our immigration policies and because we're a safe and clean and conservative, fiscally conservative, reasonably, with the exception of maybe lately some of the spending market and country. I think a lot of people are going to continue to come here, and I think they're going to want to set up either in Toronto and Vancouver. And obviously we're with the warmest climate. So I think that with that and the restrictions on land, and then the third point would be the restrictions in developing homes right now. And this is the biggest thing is the red tape caused by municipalities, just in how challenging it is to get projects through. Not only in the city of Vancouver. I mean, in the city of Vancouver, it's very, very tough for developers and for builders to build things in a reasonable amount of time to provide density or to provide, supply, essentially. But right across Vancouver, if you speak to developers, which we do all the time, that's their biggest challenge, is getting projects through to build more homes. So, in short, I don't think we're going to see. I'm kind of forever surprised at the resilience of our market. I also think there's some real restrictions in place, and I think there's a ton of demand to be in this market, and we're seeing that right now. Basically with sales ratios in several markets right now that are north of 50%. So think about that. Like, that's not only is that a seller's market, but that's a very, very aggressive seller's market. That feels like close to 2017 times. So,
wow. Next question for you. I might have 3 questions. We'll see if we can fit it in. Next question for you. What are the hot spots that people should be looking at right now? Please say Chilliwack. You don't have to say Chilliwack, but if you say Chilliwack, that's great.
The whack.
The internet with that.
If you go by the whack or Chi-Town. I
haven't really heard of Chi-Town a lot, but yeah, the whack. The whack is
our branding of it. The whack, yeah. Well, I do. You know what? I do think it's funny because like I said, like when we were talking earlier, I think that like more affordable communities where people have space. I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of upward pressure on pricing because, maybe the person that wouldn't want to live in Chilliwack because it was too much of a commute, 6 months ago is now going, hey, this makes sense. We can move our family. We can get a great sized lot, and we can have a backyard, and we can make this work. So I think we're going to see in Greater Vancouver, further out in areas like, the Fraser Valley, for example, I think we're going to see a lot of continued demand in the detached market. Is that where I would put my money right now? I mean, I think for kind of, if you're thinking kind of short term, I think there are a lot of opportunities, and I think even long term, there's a lot of opportunities in the Greater Vancouver area. But I would be more focusing on kind of the markets that seem to be experiencing pain points right now, and those aren't the markets experiencing the pain points. So I'd be looking at where the sales ratio is quite low, where there's a buyer's market, where there's some opportunity kind of created by this current situation, and I'd probably be looking for opportunities in those markets, like downtown, for example. I know I have a lot of savvy investors right now that are looking for one beds in downtown because they know that there's pain points there. So,
any other markets you're thinking of for pain points?
Well, I think I love Vancouver detached. It's not experiencing a pain point right now, but there's only around 40,000 detached houses in the city of Vancouver, and what I love about it right now is that density and increasing best use for development has been on the radar of the people of Vancouver's. Their voting decisions. It's been at the level of municipality leaders. They're concerned about affordability, they're concerned about density, and it's on the radar. So I look at, even at the price points we're at in like the detached market, I still see huge opportunities, because I think what's going to happen is we're going to continue to see light density and increases for what you can do with land in Vancouver. And if you think about 40,000 detached houses and they're getting knocked down every week, and that's a diminishing supply, right? So I think if you can find the down payment and the numbers make sense, I still think detached in Vancouver is always a good investment. And I think the sales ratios are reflecting that right now. Like East Van's on fire right now, the detached market. So.
Oh, really? Nice. Yeah, very cool. So we got just a couple minutes left. Here's the last question is, what do you think? I mean, we got elections coming up all over the place. We have a curb that's run out. What do you think is the market's going to hold for us, let's say the next 6 months and the next 3 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, for the first time in a long time, my crystal ball's kind of murky, like a lot of people's. I think for the next 6 months, I think we're going to continue to be a busy market. I don't think you can have the demand like we have right now, where there won't be kind of a lag period that will push us into probably the end of this year and even into early next year. So kind of for the foreseeable short term, I think we're going to continue to see a lot of activity. I also think that interest rates right now, I think, are going to be low until, my best prediction would be at least 2022, 2023. We're going to see very low interest rates, which I think is going to fuel the market. And then I think we're going to see an inflationary period, which typically means that house prices are going to go up. So I think we are going to actually see quite a bit of activity in the market. And for Vancouver, I think it's interesting, because I feel like perhaps because of our price points, I feel like a lot of the people that are in the market in the Greater Vancouver area, I don't know how vulnerable those people have been to job loss. I feel like it hasn't impacted a lot of our clients. I feel like they're still employed, and they're going to continue to be employed, and they still have buying options. A lot of people still have a good amount of equity in their homes to kind of make moves throughout the market. So I would say that I think the market will continue, at least for the next 6 months to a year, to be quite active. After that, Boo, I don't know. It's a tricky one. There's so many question marks about what's going to happen in the world right now. Obviously, we've got an election in BC, which I think most people feel kind of comfortable which direction that's going, I think. But there's also the U.S. election and lots of things for the that could impact our economy. I also think one thing, if you are considering getting into the market, though, it always comes down to how long you plan to be in the market and what your goals are. And I think that's really what people should be considering right now is, listen, we know you're going to have a low interest rate. So if you can handle that payment, and even if you wanted to lock in at a 5-year fixed, you're going to be around the 2% mark right now with a 5% fix. So I would run the numbers, and if you feel like you're in a position where you can afford your mortgage and you're planning on holding on to the property for what a typical life cycle is, maybe the next 5 to 7 years, like a market life cycle, then I think I wouldn't prevent what's going on in the world right now from stopping me from buying real estate right now. And I think a lot of people, it's kind of like the verdict is in. People are reacting to what's going on right now, and they're obviously still quite an appetite for real estate. So
yeah,
I think I dodged your real question, though. I don't think I gave you an appropriate prediction, but we might get sued. Future, I think we're going to be busy.
Yeah, I don't want to get sued or anything, and I can say that the Booze Hour lawyers are they got their feet up right now with no lawsuits, and I don't want to keep it that way. So. Very cool. Thank you very much for coming on, Adam. It was really cool to have you on. Maybe we can just spend 30 seconds if you want to tell people what kind of resources that you have out there and how they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. You can head to VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com. That's our site where we have all of our past episodes. And like you mentioned, we've had, I think now almost maybe 250 episodes or so. Very close to that. So there's lots of content all about the market. We've also got some great resources at that site. We've got resources for sellers. We've got resources for buyers. We've got a great real estate tool called Private Client Services that you can check out that basically gives you realtor level information. It's free on our site, so you can set up your own account. And of course, if you want to get in touch about anything, you can also email me at adam@VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Adam. I will sign us out in just 1 second. Note for everybody for next week, we'll have a Monday, my typical Monday stuff will be on the Tuesday next week, and probably won't have a live stream because I actually have a couple other things going on as far as F5 Agility goes. So you might miss out on other live streams next week, but we'll be back at it after that. So thank you, everybody. Sign up for the newsletter, DarylonBoo.com. And otherwise, hope everybody has a great weekend. Bye, folks.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for checking this out today. If you're watching via YouTube right now, go ahead and click subscribe down below. Also, click the bell for notifications. That way you will find out when we are dropping a new video or when we're going live. Also, there's DarylonBoo.com. If you head over to that, leave your name and email address. We will drop a weekly technical newsletter in your inbox every Monday. Also, this is available via podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify. Head over to one of those, hit subscribe, and you'll be able to listen to us in the car on your commute or during a walk or a run. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time.